President Lauder, Rabbanim Nichbadim, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, Rabbi Spinner, thank you so much for that lovely and very warm introduction and welcome, and may I, in return, on behalf of us all, congratulate you for the legendary contribution that you have given to the Jewish world through the Lauder Foundation. When Valerie and I and our family were living in Ireland, there was an occasion on which two senior American congressmen paid a visit to Dublin. Because both of them were Jewish, I was invited to meet them. It so happened that that day was a Monday, and on the previous day they had been in Munich, also on a political mission. And they told me that while in Munich they wanted to do the politically correct thing. On a Sunday, that means to visit a church. So the aides arranged for them to visit the leading Lutheran church in the city. They arrived, they were welcomed as VIPs, they were ushered in, they were seated in the second pew from the front. Not knowing a word of German, not being familiar with church proceedings, they hadn't a clue about what was to happen. But one of them whispered to the other, you see in the pew in front, there's one solitary figure. Let's do what he does. And it worked beautifully. Whenever he stood, they stood. Whenever he sat down, they sat down. Towards the end of the service, he stood up, they stood up, and the entire congregation burst out in uncontrollable laughter. At the end of the service, they were introduced to the pastor, and he said to them, I hope you don't mind if I explain to you what happened at that moment. You see, he said, that part of the service was the announcements. And I told my congregation that a baby boy had been born, and I then said, will the father please stand? Now, the congressmen told me that they learned a valuable political lesson from that experience, and that is, you should always know the facts before you make a stand. We want our Jewish children to make a stand. We want them with pride to be aware of their glorious heritage, to receive our traditions of the past, and to transmit it with responsibility through to the future. In order that they should make that Jewish stand, we need to provide them with the facts. Chinuch, solid, good, and true Jewish education. And the challenge outside of Israel is enormous, because the predominant environment and its values are so very different in many ways from our traditional ones. Another anecdote from our time in Ireland. We sent all of our children to Montessori play schools just before they went to the Jewish primary school. Montessori gave them a marvelous grounding in education, and on one day I fetched our son Noam. He was 2.5 years old at the time, and the teacher said to me, beaming with pride, today we taught the children all about the continents. Ask Noam at home, you'll see he knows the names of the continents. I was enormously impressed. And when we got home, I said to Mum, do you know the names? Yes, yes. I said, you know what, I'll start you off and you finish their names, fine. I said Afri, he said Ker. I said Ur, he said Rib. I said Australia, he said Leah. I said A, he said Je. And then I said Ameri, and he said Christmas. So if this can happen in a rabbi's home, in a free country where we have a great Jewish educational system, how much more so can it happen in Eastern Europe against the odds? In a country such as Hungary, where for so long our people have suffered enormously. Our visit to Budapest, and in particular our presence here in the Lauder Yavne school, reminds me of an impactful passage in the book of Bereshit. Yaakov Avinu, Jacob our patriarch, was on his way out for the first time from the Holy Land. God appeared to him in a vision. He saw angels going up and down the ladder. And then upon waking, the Almighty said to him, V'haya zaracha ke'afar haaretz, your generations will be like the dust of the earth. Ufaratzta, Yama v'kedma v'tzafona v'negba, and they will be dispersed to the west and to the east, to the north and to the south. So the Kli Yakar, rabbi in Prague a few hundred years ago, asked the question, with regard to the directions, surely they should be given clockwise, north, east, southwest, or anti-clockwise, north, west, southeast. But why west and the east, from the north to the south? And the Kli Yakar explains, this will be the story of Jewish history, said God to Jacob. Our fate will swing swiftly, like a pendulum, from one extreme to another. At a very time when there is hardly any light to be seen at the end of our Jewish tunnel of suffering, that's when we will be on the threshold of great salvation. And did we not see that during the 1940s, when we emerged from the darkest period in our history through to the establishment of Medinat Yisrael? And then Sephorno, the Spanish medieval commentator, he asks about the symbolism of the dust of the earth. Why is the Jewish nation compared to sand, he asks, and he answers by saying, there will be times in the future, says God to Jacob, when our enemies will treat us like sand. They will trample upon us. They will consider us to be subhuman, of no value whatsoever. But no human being can remain alive forever, and those very people one day will be dead and buried, and that very same sand will continue to exist, to thrive, to live above them. So too, said Sephorno, the time will come when great nations who oppress the Jewish people will be gone from this world, but Am Yisrael Chai, the Jewish nation, will always exist. And did we not see that as well during the past century, when great nations treated us in the most horrific and enormously depraving way, through which we suffered in such an intolerable fashion? But those great nations have vanished. And here in this school, we can witness the children of a thriving community, because despite all that we have gone through, Am Yisrael Chai, the Jewish people, continues to live on. And how do we now respond to the challenge of the opportunities that are being given to us here in Eastern Europe? I believe we can derive inspiration from the two great mountains in our tradition. Why two mountains? Well, you see, one could easily refer to this particular week on our calendar as the week of two mountains. On Shabbat we read the Parsha of Bahar, recording the mitzvot given to us, Bahar Sinai, on Mount Sinai. And tomorrow night we will be celebrating Yom Yerushalayim, the 46th anniversary of the day on which Jerusalem was reunified, and Har HaMoriah, Mount Moriah, was once again in our hands. These are the two great mountains of our tradition, Mount Sinai and Mount Moriah, and they are so very different from each other. Just think about it. Mount Sinai. Let me ask you this question. For last Shabbat, why didn't a single community in Israel think of the idea of holding a Shabbaton on Mount Sinai? Wouldn't it have been a great idea to read Parshat Bahar al-Hahar, all about the mitzvot given at Mount Sinai on the mountain? They could have come with members of their community, climbed the mountain on the day before, establish an Eruv on top of it, read from the Torah. A better question. Next week we'll be celebrating Shavuot. Why is it that no Jewish community in the world has thought of the idea of celebrating Shavuot on the mountain? Can you imagine what it would be like to read the 10 Commandments on the very spot on which Moses received them from the Almighty? We haven't done that. Our simcha planners, our party managers are trying their utmost to think of fresh and new ideas. Why has nobody ever thought of a bar mitzvah on Mount Sinai, a bat mitzvah on Mount Sinai, a wedding on Mount Sinai? Why can't we arrive at Moses International Airport, stay at the Sinai Hilton, or perhaps, the Sinai Intercontinental, hop on a cable car to go to the top. We've forgotten about the mountain. In fact, we actually don't even know which mountain it is today. There is a mountain called Jabal Musa, Mountain of Moses, at the foot of which there is the St. Ekaterina Monastery. Maybe it is Mount Sinai, maybe it's not. You would think, after the greatest event in the history of the world, when we received the Torah from God, that we would take the trouble to recall where the location was. Contrast that now with Mount Moriah. Im eshkachech Yerushalayim, tishkach yemini. If I forget you, Jerusalem, may my right hand forget its cunning, says the psalmist. Yerushalayim has always been in our consciousness. Har Moriah is the beating heart of Am Yisrael, at the very center of the eternal capital of our nation. That's where our temples were. That's where we pay pilgrimages today. That's where we hold our simchas. So why this difference? I would like to suggest two different answers. The first is that at Mount Sinai we had an experience which was exclusively bein adam lamakom, between ourselves and God. At Mount Moriah, of course we've had experiences between ourselves and God, but there's also been a dimension bein adam lechavero, between ourselves and our fellow human beings. Why was Mount Moriah chosen? There is an ancient legend. It's the legend of the two brothers living in the hills of Jerusalem. One night, one woke up. He thought to himself, I'm married, I've got children, I've got lots of people to help me here, but my brother is single, he's all alone, he must be starving. He got up in the middle of the night, filled a sack with grain, schlepped it over his shoulder, and he popped it outside his brother's home. On that very same night, his brother couldn't sleep. He thought to himself, I've got only one mouth to feed. My brother has a whole family to feed. It must be so difficult for him. He got up, he filled the sack with grain, schlepped it over his shoulder, dropped it outside his brother's home. Night after night, the two brothers did the same. After about 2 weeks, they bumped into each other in the middle of the night on top of a hill. They suddenly realized what had happened. They embraced and they cried with joy. And at that moment, God in heaven declared, this very spot on which the two brothers have met, that is the holiest ground on earth, and that's where the temples will stand. Because the essence of Kedusha is compassion. At the heart of our responsibility to our Creator is our responsibility to our fellow human beings. Mount Sinai only recalls an event between ourselves and God. At Mount Moriah, we have shown compassion, we have connected with others, we've shown tolerance towards others. Ahavat Yisrael, the love of all Jews, has been a central piece of our lives, and Ahavat Habriot, love of all creatures, is right at the heart of what we are as Jews. And that is what Har Moriah stands for. It stands for a Judaism which is full of loving kindness, and extends to us the message that Yiddishkeit without Menschlichkeit is not true Yiddishkeit. And that is why Har Sinai is forgotten about, but Har HaMoriah is right at the heart of our Jewish value system to this day. Let me offer a second answer. Har Sinai, Mount Sinai, was a place of intention. Har HaMoriah, a location for action. At Mount Sinai we declared, Kol asher diber Hashem na'aseh v'nishma, whatever God asks of us, we will do and then we will understand. What did we do there? It was an undertaking. We promised what we would achieve in the future. At Mount Moriah, we translated our intentions into achievements. We crystallized our objectives through our temples, through prayer to God, through acts of compassion, throughout all the centuries. Mount Moriah has been the heart of Jewish, meaningful and uplifting activity. And when it comes to traditional Judaism, it's lovely to have intentions, to make resolutions and to dream. But what's more important is to actually achieve something. When I reflect on this school in which we are presently seated, I can see, thank God, both of our responses to our mountain question being reflected. We're not only in the heart of a wonderful school, we're also in the presence of a truly wonderful man. President Lauder, you are an enormous inspiration to the entire Jewish world. First of all, in you we find the fusion of Ben Adam LaMakom and Ben Adam LaChavero. Through everything that you do, you bring together compassion, loving kindness, tolerance, the love of all people, together with commitment to our Creator. That is true Yiddishkeit, and through you, that is being achieved in this part of the world. Secondly, the Jewish world is not short of dreamers, not short of people with great intentions, with wonderful resolutions, certainly not short of people who can give advice. But the Jewish people is short of those who have the courage to translate dreams into reality. And in Ambassador Lauder, we find just the person who has taken dreams, ideas, even engaged in risks for the sake of the future of Am Yisrael. We're sitting here right now in the heart of one such reality which has been translated from a mere dream. And if this can be achieved in Budapest, in Hungary, Kal Vachomer can it be achieved in our communities around the world. And from Ambassador Lauder, we can emerge from our experience here this evening to go back to the 100 or so countries from which we have come in order to reinvigorate our communities and to redouble our efforts for the sake of chinuch, solid and good Jewish education for people of all ages, both informal and formal, because it is only through education that we as a people have a bright future. When Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai realized that the city of Jerusalem was just about to be destroyed by the Romans, he arranged to be taken out of the city in a coffin. He was presumed to be dead, but in actual fact, he reappeared and stood before Vespasian, the Roman governor at the time, who would be the future emperor, and given an opportunity to make a wish, he said, Tein li Yavne v'chachameha. Enable me to build a school in Yavne. We won't have a temple anymore. Many Jewish people will be dead, but allow us to re-establish our Judaism through education. And so too here in Budapest, a wonderful Jewish phoenix has arisen above the ashes of the Shoah through this school and many other outstanding projects of the Lauder Foundation to guarantee that through this Lauder Yavne School and many other similar projects, the Jewish people will continue to live through the great education that is given them. Thank you, Ambassador Lauder, for the inspiration you've given us tonight and through everything that you and all your assistants are carrying out in such a remarkable way. And ladies and gentlemen, let us return back home now to give our children the facts, and as a result, may they in the future make a wonderful Jewish stand. Thank you very much.